Hey guys, Creator Mom, welcome to my channel. So, I realized that when I start to do things like on my own or try to, you know, say do some things that you would pay somebody else to do, I realize how I struggle with trusting my own self. It's kind of like, say you've drank pasteurized milk your whole life, and all of a sudden, you start getting the desire to own more land and maybe have a couple of cows, have a milking cow. You just want to learn how to milk cows and drink your own milk and make your own butter, um, and all the wonderful things you can do with cow's milk. But then as you embark on this journey and you milk your cow, you have your milk, you start to think, am I really doing this right? Am I going to poison myself? Is is there bad bacteria in my milk that I don't know about? We start to lose trust. It kind of exposes the lack of trust we have for ourselves, and in our instincts and in our senses. Um, because we can smell if something's off. We can taste if something don't taste right. Um, and we know we've learned how to milk a cow and we've researched about it and we're pretty sure we're doing correctly. But it's really when you start to embark on things that usually were outsourced, the self-doubt can hit you really hard. Um, but it's really interesting. Like, my car needed some fluids, not just oil, it needed like brake fluid. And um, it was funny, like, I was trying to do it like super perfect. I just, it, something just as simple as that, because I never put brake fluid in my car before. And it was just like the tension of wanting to do it perfectly. Obviously, nobody wants to spill. You can't just be spilling fluids all over your car, but like, and it was like this doubt in my mind, like, oh, probably something's gonna go wrong because you put the fluid in there. Like, something's gonna go wrong. But, just something as simple as putting fluid in your car can expose the amount of self doubt and lack of self trust that we have, and which might come from being raised by a narcissistic person. Um, I, I'm like trying to figure out, is it part of like natural growing and learning? Because my kids seem to be pretty confident about what they do. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if it was just a lack of a nurturing of inner trust. Because of course, a narcissistic parent doesn't want you to. I would think that they really don't want you to trust yourself. They want you to trust what they're saying above yourself. You're always to trust and do what they say above your inner guidance. And I understand that could be a hard line to walk when you're dealing with children. You know what I mean? Of allowing kids to follow their inner guidance and their desires, but also as a parent, helping them. Like my friend Karen says, you got to help guide that missile. So we're, guiding the missiles without destroying their self-confidence and their self-trust. So we want to like foster and nurture that self-trust and confidence, because you don't want to always be looking to the outside, not knowing what to do because you don't trust what your inner guidance is telling you to do. That's too scary, right? No. I have as of late, embarked on making wine with wild grapes that we foraged from this local woody area. And every time I would walk on this path, I would look and stare at these grapes. And it was what I had noticed. I made videos about the fact that we had wild grapes. So God made you at least 5 months. I was walking on this path and staring at these grapes and thinking, wow, so cool, wild grapes, and identifying them and knowing that these really were wild grapes, like trying them. And there is so much wild grapes where I live. It's crazy. If somebody wanted to, they could forage them all and make like a shit ton of wine. But I don't know, maybe that's my purpose, right? So all these months I'm thinking, I wonder what it would be like to make wine out of these grapes, or grape juice or something. Foraging is really cool. So minus the poisonous plants, but thankfully we have so many good resources these days. You can easily look up on university websites and stuff. They always have stuff about what plants are poisonous and how to identify plants. So anyways, walking on the path one day, and my son is very entrepreneurial. He wants to turn everything to money, which is pretty cool. So he's like, I'm gonna collect these grapes and I'm gonna sell them to my friends. In my head, I'm thinking, nobody's gonna want to buy these grapes. That's the problem with my thinking. I'm always thinking, no one's gonna want to buy that from you. No one's gonna want that from you. That's the problem. He don't have that problem, and I don't ever want him to have that problem. So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna collect these and sell these. And I'm like, okay. He didn't really, I was like, cool, we know that they're grapes, you know what I'm saying? So long story short, we're walking on the path and he says that, and then I think, man, I really would wonder what it would be like to make wine from these wild grapes. And but I thought, but I don't really have a ladder. A lot of the grapes are higher up, but I'm able to forage a lot without a ladder as well. Enough for at least a gallon of wine, So my inner self, or God within me, was like, that's the problem. Your buts. You're always saying but this, but that. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So we ended up foraging a pot full of these grapes, and I started researching, videos and instructionals on how to make wine from wild grapes. And I kind of found one and stuck with that one. This was earlier in November, the beginning of November, end of October. And yeah, so the method that I chose was to start off by boiling them, crushing them and then boiling. Because, guys, if you that's the thing with learning how to do a craft, or becoming interested in how to do something. There's like people out there doing it 1,001 ways, but I think the point is to touch the grapes, to work with them, to become intimately acquainted with like what the premise is of this process. Like, um, what is the premise? The premise is that the yeast are going to break down the sugars to create alcohol. That's practically the premise. Um, and how people go about it is, many different ways. Of course, without allowing other yeast and things like that to come into your mixture. So keeping things covered, shit like that. So the one guy that I watched, he preferred boiling his grapes. Um, he didn't really use like a lot of preservatives or Camden tablets or anything, because he's like, he boiled it and then adds his sugar and yeast, etc. So I was overwhelmed by the amount of information and different ways there are to make wine, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to stick with one for this batch and see what happens. So I just started doing it, and then I ordered my wine kit. So, because when I get excited about something, I just kind of want to jump in head first. But anyways, so I started the process, and then I ordered my kit that included my carboy and airlock and all that stuff. So, um, so yeah, then I let it ferment for 2 weeks, um, or so, and then I racked it, what they call racking it, uh, to get the, because there's sediment that forms at the bottom of the wine. So I put it into another bottle, and I tried it. And at first, I didn't really like it because it had like a woody taste to it. And then I read that that could be from crushing the grape too much, which I know that I did because I was crushing it with my hands. Um, so I think that I did it a little bit too much. From what I'm learning, apparently, I think that's why they did it with the feet back in the day, because they don't really want it too crushed, just crushed enough where you're popping the grape peels and stuff, getting some of the juices out. So, yeah, I let it sit a while longer, and finally I put it in the fridge. And as it chilled for a couple of days and I tasted it, I'm like, okay, now this is starting to taste better. So it tastes really good. Um, but the whole time when I was tasting it, I felt this this sense of a lack of trust in myself, that that I was gonna poison myself or something like that. Um, which you can get alcohol poisoning if you just drink a lot, but it's just like I did something wrong. There's some weird bacteria in here. I'm gonna poison myself. Like these thoughts started coming in my. I'm like, shit, that's awful. So, yeah, it just made me realize, like, man, I really don't trust myself. I've really been taught probably even not to trust myself. So, but yeah, needless to say, I'm still here and I didn't really poison myself. So, and the wine tastes pretty good. It's not something that I want to drink every day. I really would like to have a couple other people try it, you know, maybe like a little bit just to see like what they think about the taste. But I'm now embarking on a new, I watched this other video and I kind of wrote down all the steps where this guy was making pineapple wine. And I'm like, that sounds really good to me. So I'm going to try that. I think the thing with wine is that there's so many different methods. You can be as loose with it, I think, as you want, as basic, and you can be as stringent, you know, as you want. And um, it's all about, I think when you're doing a craft like that, it's about learning, becoming acquainted with the grapes, with the yeast, and becoming acquainted with what you like, you know, so it's going to be like a process. But with the pineapple wine, it's, the guy is a little bit more stringent. He's like sterilized everything, which is good. And he's adding the Camden tablets. He's adding the preservatives, or like the acid blends, yeast nutrient, pectic enzyme. Like he's adding all this stuff. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna follow this method now. He didn't boil, so it was like a crushing. You crush your pineapple, you let it sit. Anyways, so I'm gonna follow that method, and that one is gonna take a while. It's probably gonna take a month and a half or so, or maybe a month and a half to 2 months before I actually take, have this wine. So, I feel like with the first batch, I don't feel as confident to bring it around people and have them try it, because I feel like people are gonna be like, and this is part of my old training that I have to revise, an old self concept, because there's part of myself that's like, why would anybody want to try wine that you made? Ew. Like they're not going to trust you. They're going to think that it's going to be disgusting. They're going to think that you're going to poison them. So, which is fucking, it's awful, you know? But, I mean, I guess it's, you know, not too far-fetched that somebody might be a little bit weary of trying someone's first batch of like homemade wine. You just got to get, you know, ask somebody who's desperate for a buzz. You know, alcohol is, you know, people are strapped these days. Somebody comes and says, hey, you want to try a little like communion sized cup of my homemade wine, you know? They might say yeah. Anyways, so that whole almost 20 minutes was just to really say that when you embark on doing something that usually was bought from a store or outsourced, the amount of self-doubt can really fuck with you. But the more you just, I think the more you keep pursuing it and reading about it and becoming more and more familiar with it, because like me and my friend were talking about, it's just the ignorance, you know, it's just like when you're doing something that you are not, you don't know a lot about, and you're just like new to it, you know, yeah, you have to struggle through the dark night of the soul of self-doubt a little bit, you know, until you keep working with it and touching it and learning about it and reading about it and experiencing it. Then you become more seasoned and more confident, you know. So I guess in a way, like nobody just starts off like more confident, but you know, you kind of like earn that, or kind of just like grows as you go. It grows as you go. But yeah, I would really love to get past that part of my mind that says nobody would want to buy anything from you, or nobody would want to eat or drink something that you made. So, all right, cheers.